Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the March 23rd, 2023 Planning Board. My name is Kirsten Harries. I'm acting chair this evening, and I'm joined by our fellow planning board members, Erin Carney, Rochelle Gebler, Ben Nielsen, and our newest member, Benji Sirota. I'm going to just go through the agenda briefly before we get started. The first agenda item is going to be Edge on Hudson Riverfront Development Block H, an amended site plan and final ARB approval presentation. The second will be at 180 Bedford Road, an amended site plan approval, continuation of the previous presentation. The third item is 46 Hudson Street, a proposed three-family residence site plan approval with public hearing. Number 4 is 135 Beekman Avenue, a proposed multifamily building architectural review approval presentation. Fifth is 305 North Washington Street, proposed three-family residence site plan approval presentation. Number 6, the applicant has requested an adjournment until next month, so that would be April 20th, 2023. That was going to be Edge on Hudson Riverfront Development Phase 2 Waterfront Open Space. Number 7, Edge on Hudson Riverfront Development Block OP and N Townhomes Phase 2 Architectural Review Approval Presentation. And last, approval of minutes. So with that, we'll get started on agenda item 1, Edge on Hudson Riverfront Development Block H.
Good evening, members of the board, Madam Acting Chair. My name is Elizabeth Darby. I'm here from Hines, representing Middle Rev Development and Block H. And we are here to present our proposed mechanical screening along Westward. And we'll jump right to the rendering. And open up if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, one question I had, later in your presentation, you show a detail of a screen. It looked like it was brown in color. I just wanted to understand if that was a representation of the color that you'd have or just the pattern of the
It was just
screen.
for material, so
Okay.
we could get a sense of the type of screening installed, existing.
Okay.
That was just me asking our vendor to help with some real life examples. The color will be to match all other railings and things that we have around the building. It'll be a custom powder coat color.
And is it more of a charcoal gray type color?
Yeah, it's a darker.
Similar to the fenestration frames? Or? And has all other materials that you're showing in the rendering, are they the same as what we've previously seen? Nothing else has changed, correct?
No, besides the screening?
Correct.
No, nothing else has changed. Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions related to the screening? Hearing none, I move that we waive the public hearing.
Second.
Yeah. And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, also I would ask, our consultant that usually drafts is not here, but I'm going to have
I'll
them
mention it to Dave.
draft a resolution for next time.
Great.
But thank you.
Okay,
That
thank you
concludes
very
our
much.
vote.
Great.
Okay. Next on the agenda, 180 Bedford Road. You want to come forward?
I have it. Yeah, because you're gonna put new stuff on it.
I do, yeah. Would I do it in this pan, or I give it to you?
You can, are you over?
Yeah. I can do that. can't transfer because it's Dropbox. But if you need to, I can hold my laptop. Is it right on the Jim? Okay. Kim Martelli, owner and principal of KTM Architect, the architect of record on behalf of the applicant, Hudson Pines LLC. We were before you in prior months and last month as well to present the generator additions located at Bedford Road. This is Bedford Road down here, and we had proposed 2 larger generators, and there are some underground propane tanks as well, 14 one-gallon tanks. Where we left off was the request to provide selections and specifications and renderings for proposed landscaping that will both screen the generators, which will be in sound enclosure jackets. It's 2 Kohler generators. Each would have a 70 attenuation jacket and be located on a concrete pad with surrounding retaining walls, which set them into the grade, which is a pretty steep slope. What we did return with is specifications for rhododendra, which are located between Bedford Road, and if you want, I could show you a visual, by the way, on this road, but there is a gravel pathway that's an access road for service. It terminates just about where you see the end of that line. It's drawn as a hard line, even though it's a gravel pathway, because it's the best way we can define drivable versus non-drivable areas. There are additional American hollies. There are 9 that surround the face of those 2 generators, 3 others that are pushed down here. And then there are different style holly, which is used in shaded areas as well. So 2 style American hollies, 5 of the shade-grown hollies, and 9 of the traditional American hollies. The hollies are intended to be planted around 12 to 14 feet high in initial height. As a reminder, the generator will be under that height. It's why we're putting some of those hollies directly at the face of it, and then a few under where we have kind of an open screened area. And again, some hollies are pushed out. But we had talked about last time, there is in fact, and there will be maintained, a service access road. The service access road provides 2 functions for this particular usage of area. It will allow for serving and filling the underground propane tanks, and it would allow for service to the generators. Vehicles will not go directly up to the face of the generators. There is an on-site transformer right in this location, which is a physical barrier to vehicles coming up to the generators. So it would be manned service. Those generators will be tested in manned service from walking up a very short grade to either the lower or the higher generator. And I think probably, I have some stills, but I'll open up the video as well. The stills are just snapshots of views going up Bedford Road, and I'm heading from the lower end of Bedford, passing by the generators. I can zoom in on it. They are very hard to see. I'll stop during the video so I can point out to you where they're located. And I mentioned to Pam, the only amendment we had made since the submission was Hudson Pines had made a final determination on the color of the jacket. The color is called stone gray. I can bring it up if it's helpful. We had said the word gray last time. We've now found the manufacturer for the jacket. We can certainly submit it to the planning board if they'd like it, so it would be submitted with the building permit. That enclosure is critical because it allows us to meet decibel rating for sound attenuation, given the hertz that we have for all the equipment. In the video, I'll try to stop it because I bet you I can show you little peeks of where you can see it. And the other thing I mentioned to Pam is, if it's helpful, I know you're mentioning just the actual conditions. I have a good series of photographs that the board might want to have for reference of where I drove up and down the road, so you could see the current area of gaps and how we're filling it in with landscaping, why we pick certain scale and certain lushness of plantings. And we could also go to the site too. This is the one, I'll show you, see if that works full scale. So I'm coming from the bottom of Bedford Road. It's a hard gray, just so you can see it well, but it's that gravel pathway. That's kind of where my cursor is. Okay, you can see them in between the trees. So those are the generators back there. There you go. Oops. So there's one right there. And remember, there's 2 of them side by side, and one is slightly elevated than the other. But as a reminder, you're elevated from the street as well, so we'll be up higher than the grade of the curb line. You discussed the chain link fence. That is an existing chain link fence that will remain on the site. We feel pretty confident that what we're proposing is going to work well. Certainly, plantings are always subject to plantings. So it's going to be an active process where the board is welcome to come, and if you have conditions of plantings, we'd welcome the board to attend when the planting is scheduled. We do also have planting requirements for the balance of the property, including replanting of evergreens in front of the carriage house, which is further up the site toward the gate, toward the gated entrance. There were a few comments that also came in from engineering. They had come in early in March, but Bivo Associates hadn't received them. We did get them just after our submission. They were very particular to the stormwater drainage. Let me know if you'd like me to go through what those comments are and what the responses were. If anything was not
I can
satisfactory.
chime in if you'd like.
Sure.
With the new submission that we received this week, all the stormwater and site engineering issues that I had raised have been resolved.
Okay.
So I have a couple questions. So on the renderings here, obviously this is like full beefed out condition. Looks like you're using a lot of deciduous stuff. Obviously rhododendrons, American holly are all evergreen.
Correct.
What's this gonna look like? You know, in the 6 months we don't have leaf coverage in there, and I mean, yeah, just.
So that's a fair question. I mean, my field visit, could I hold up my laptop? Would you like to see some pictures? Because I can't transfer them right now, but I could send them to the board. But, I mean, it might be valuable if the board has any hesitation. I photographed this just a couple weeks ago, and we were really in our lowest tree growth, but it may be beneficial if the board wants to have this. I did really like a couple feet. I did a photo every couple feet, and we have actually a very good density right now of plantings. What I made the landscaper and the owner's agent do is stand in the place of the generators to see, again, how well I can see them. And I could submit those as well. It's very hard. We had one of them hold a 12-foot pole because we were looking for the reference point of the hollies. Hollies are going to be directly in front of the generator. That's our most critical thing. And so we've also staked out on the site. If you'd like to come, we have both generators staked out with visual pink markers so we can see the footprints of them. But actually, even in the winter, we have quite a lush landscape buffer here. But I'm happy to do a walkthrough with any board members that want to. And this is a nice series of photos. I'm sorry, I should have submitted them with this package because it's very helpful to see. This is the time of year that you'd be most concerned about.
I think we'd like to take you up on the offer to make a site visit. We'd even request, if possible, to have the corners of the generators staked out at the height that they would be, so that we can kind of then from the road see and then walk it also.
To do the heights of it, if we were to do the volume of it,
Right.
you're saying?
Well, if you do a stake at each corner and then something that we can just see, you know, some kind of,
Contractors, they could put some posts up.
yeah. And then once that's ready, just let the building department know and they can let us know and we can coordinate a site visit.
Okay.
How tall are the boxes?
Boxes are about 8 feet. So it's a generator smaller than that, but they have to be in sound attenuation jackets because we do have to meet decibel ratings. The decibel rating requirements in the village are based on variations in hertz. One of our hertz ratings can create a very relatively loud decibel rating. So we are working with Parside Mechanical, who's designed a jacket enclosure of a whole variety of colors, but stone gray looks like the nicest one. They don't have a nice green, so
Right.
I decided to forgo the green. This help, I'll have that spec with me as well. We can take a
Okay.
look at the color of it. And if you do drive by the site in advance, be mindful, there is a very visible, a very present transformer there. Try
Okay.
to find it. Try to find it, because that's the same thing you're trying to do with the generators.
Right.
The transformer is directly adjacent to it. If you feel that today that transformer is well screened, it's going to give you some confidence about that generator screening as well with the additional plantings.
Is that transformer on your plans?
Yeah, it's on the
Just so we have a
plans. We
reference,
just
right?
graded out. It's that rectangle right in the front. Okay, I'll show you right now. Take it back.
So just kind of a quick question. I mean, the evolution of this thing, originally this was in a full enclosure, like an
Yes.
actual structure.
That's correct. It's the way we built, this board wasn't involved, but we built another generator on the Mount Pleasant side, and it was successful to put it in that enclosure because the enclosure partially existed. It was financially beneficial, it was sound beneficial, the noise went the back way. When we ended up studying the one in the front, it wasn't as ideal. Cost was one of the hugest issues, the biggest issues we had to overcome. Both the cost of the generator, we were starting to build up what the sound attenuation was going to be on it in the enclosure, and we were both investing in a sound enclosure and an actual enclosure. Comments back from the planning board also about disturbance helped us look at it a second time. Because by taking away that built structure, we were able to minimize the disturbance significantly. Because now we're really down to only the 2 pads the generator sits on. And the retaining walls would have been effective regardless, because we're still using those walls as the same type of walls we did with the generator bunkers.
Sure. Is there, I mean, is there any kind of architectural or practical reason that this wall doesn't essentially curve around and cover three sides of this? Or is there?
So to cover the front, if you look at the grading, the problem is that if we come around it further, we're gonna then just put a wall in front of it. A wall for the function of a wall.
Sure.
And the generator, unless we want to build a wall for which we need to get a variance, because we would end up having to get a variance, the wall would not provide neither screening nor sound improvement. There wouldn't be any particular benefit, either architecturally or acoustically, to putting the retaining wall. The retaining wall is very much intended for grading purposes.
Okay.
I think Ben was asking, but sorry, not to speak for you. You were talking about a wall that would screen from the road.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like an architectural kind of wall, I guess.
Oh, you mean a wall in lieu of a fence?
Yeah, so you have, you have these retaining walls that, yeah, I understand are for grade. And then they kind of, as the slope goes from the generator down towards the road, they obviously, you don't need that
They'll meet
retaining
with the grade.
anymore. But again, I was just kind of curious if there was any reason why there wasn't essentially an architectural wall that's, obviously there's a ton of kind of historic style stacked boulder type walls that are all over the place in this area. I was just kind of curious if there was a aversion, I guess, to a physical screen type of wall there versus just relying on vegetation or whatever. The vegetation may be adequate,
Yeah.
but I was just wanted to ask that question to you.
I would probably say that it's an unnecessary component when we really want to landscape it regardless. I think that's probably the simple answer.
Okay.
To do a freestanding retaining wall would also be a freestanding retaining wall. So it would be the cost to build up a wall. If you go down the site actually past this property to the gated entry when we get in the Mount Pleasant side, sort of what would potentially be what you're describing would be with masonry walls, brick face, or full brick walls, be something of that character. That might be the only thing I could see them potentially doing, but again, we'd have to go back and say, what is this financial investment and what is the benefit?
Sure.
I hate to say that that's the issue, but I know that that's part of it. Part of it really is finding a financially reasonable way to address this concern.
Just to follow up, you mentioned that this scheme or plan disturbs less than the original one you presented in November. You're referring to less trees are going to have to be cut down? Or?
Less trees and less impervious area.
Okay.
There is a small stormwater retention system designed to accommodate runoff for this. That's located just down the road from this. So the civil engineering amended drawings. So zoom in on that. At the base of the generator, oops, that's our main house. It is a big property, remember. Let's go to the right spot. So at the base of the generator, there's going to be 2 yard drains. They're going to collect water in an underground pipe. There's an added drainage manhole for service. And there'll be 2 underground 330XL recharger Coltex. And that water is then routed to a swale further down the property, and then it's discharged into a rock outlet. So a small amount of runoff, very minimal. If you're familiar with stormwater drainage, the amount of storage that we're talking about within those 2 330XL underground Coltech rechargers is relatively minimal.
And in this, where these tanks are buried, are they buried enough to where there's going to be like turf over that, or?
So it'd be full grass coverage, so the tanks would only have their filling covers exposed. We typically have a minimum required with propane tanks that the filling cover is about 6 inches above grade. Filling covers for most and all oil propane tanks are green. They would look pretty much identical to a beautiful lush yard. The goal in that area was to keep the hill as much grass coverage as it could and try to keep the generators as far away from the treed area. So if you can see, we've left a relatively good buffer between the edge of this tree area and the open grass cover. But it would be grass cover shy of the filling covers. And this is just a topsoil stockpile that'll go away once everything's completed.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the board? So we'll await word of when you're ready for the make a site visit,
Yep.
and we'll just keep this open until next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have 46 Hudson Street.
Good evening. Yeah, so as you probably know, last week we had the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, which gave the approval to come back to the planning board for the site plan approval. So basically, just to give you the rundown, we slimmed down the building pretty significantly. Not significantly, we slimmed it down a little bit. Basically, we reduced the, we increased the setback from the 48 Hudson neighbor from 2'7" to 3 feet. And then also, we took out one of the bedrooms from the top. That's the existing building. Let me get you that's the proposed building. So we originally had 6 bedrooms in total. Originally we had 7 bedrooms in the proposal. It was 2 bedrooms, and then 3 bedrooms on the very top. And then so we made it 2 bedrooms on the bottom, 2 bedrooms in the middle, 2 bedrooms on the top. So now because it's 6 bedrooms instead of 7, the parking stall requirement was reduced by 1. So instead of having a requirement of 7 parking stalls, we have 6 parking stalls required. We are providing 3 parking stalls, and we got the ZBA approval for that. So basically, you know, we're trying to get it as slim as possible, and at this point, we wanted to open it up to the planning board and see if you had any additional questions.
If you can just introduce yourself. If you did, I don't think I heard you.
Yeah.
And then actually give us just a little bit of backstory, since we have some new members that haven't been here for the whole evolution of the project, to set the context of where you began to where you are now, and then show us the plans, site plan, and the floor plans, and the elevations.
Yeah, sure. Let me go to the plans. This is the ZBA presentation. Okay, I guess to start, basically, our project is a 3-family building, and as a 3-family building, you know, we're trying to keep the current mass of the existing building more or less the same. It ends up being that the proposed building is actually a little bit smaller, just slightly. We're going from 1 parking stall currently to 3 parking stalls. So we're increasing it by 2 from the current. Currently, it's a 2-family. We're bumping it up to a 3-family. And just to also give you more general, so basically, it's 3 apartments, 1 on each floor, except the top floor is a duplex. 2 bedrooms on the bottom with 2 baths, 2 bedrooms in the middle with 2 baths, and then 2, let me get to the plans. And then on the top apartment, which is the duplex, it's a 2-bedroom with 3 baths. And our engineer has a site plan as well, which I don't know if that's it's not part of this set. Let me show you that one. So basically, we have the stormwater system in the back and 3 parking stalls in the back of the property. So then you would drive along this asphalt driveway that's along the south side of the building towards the back to park the cars. We moved the building. Originally, the building is on more towards the south side, and we shifted it towards the north side of the property in order to create more windows along the south side and more natural daylighting into the apartments.
Does the board have any questions or comments?
So the existing building is up against, it looked like there was almost a zero setback to the other building on the, I guess on the other side.
Yeah, right there.
So flipping the building, you said that, you know, there's some additional light in there. I mean, is there, obviously that's a, you know, a change in condition from what's there now, right? I mean, what other drivers, I mean, it sounds like some light to this apartment, but I mean, there are other factors that kind of drove that decision with the site plan layout?
In terms of flipping it from the originally closer to the south side, now closer to the north side, the only reason was the light. That's really the only reason why we decided to do it.
Okay. I move to open the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody from the public want to come forward and comment, or you can feel free to stand up and use the microphone there in the center. Just state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Clara Teagle, 38 Hudson Street. And the issue that I have, I know the owners of 48 Hudson Street. I grew up with their son, Bill White, and I know their aunts as well, who are the owners. And the issue that I have is that at the zoning board of approval meeting, they had initially had 2 feet 7 inches as the north yard side setback. And then they changed it to 3 feet. Now that's a negligible 5 inches. And I voiced then that that was unacceptable to the owners. Now saying that I was looking at the zoning code, and it's a minimum of 5 feet. So since the minimum is 5 feet, obviously you're not enforcing that zoning code. And since that's not going to be enforced, and I'm not being arbitrary here, the setback should be 3 feet 10 inches instead of the 3 feet. And the reason for that is if you have to do repairs on that building with just 3 feet between 48 and 46, that makes the pitch, if you have to put a ladder in there, very steep, which is risky. So, yeah, I feel that 3 foot 10 inches would accommodate both the 48 Hudson Street and 46 Hudson Street. I think that's doable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is William White. Grew up in 48 Hudson Street, and I wanted to give a little bit of history there. Back in the early 1900s, Mr. Letcher Evans worked for John D. Rockefeller, and was the first of the Evans that moved into Tarrytown, into the North Tarrytown. He bought this house on 48 Hudson Street under duress during that particular period, and you can imagine why. First of all, did you receive my letter,
Yes,
my memo? Okay. Because
we did.
I'm going to talk around that.
Okay.
Well, anyway, he bought that house, and now that house is occupied by three of his great nieces. The oldest being 99, the second being 96, and the third being 94 years old. They grew up in that house, I grew up in that house, and my daughter grew up in that house. We have had a wonderful neighborhood for years, over 120 years, as a matter of fact. I received a phone call several months ago. I live in California, Berkeley, California I live. I received a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning from Atlanta, Georgia. And in the phone call, they said that your chain link fence was torn down. I asked, why was it torn down? No, they had no idea why that chain link fence was torn down. Chain link fence was on the south side of our building, which is the north side of 46 Hudson Street. I came to Tarrytown to find out why that fence was torn down, and I was told there was no explanation given. I made contact with the developer, and he said, well, I knocked on the door and there was no answer. 90 years old people in the building, I can imagine, you know, they can't hear or whatever. But he tore the fence down. There was no written notice about that to the occupants of the 48 Hudson Street. Anyway, what took place after that, I came back in November and was approached by 3 neighbors of 48 Hudson Street about this project, and they were all concerned about what was going to take place. I had no idea that the footprint of that house was going to be moved to the south side of my house, or 48 Hudson Street, 2 feet 7 inches, blocking 3 windows on that side, and to me that was unacceptable. So I came to the zone meeting and I told them that is unacceptable. For over 120 years, that building, we had a space between the buildings that was usable, and there was a driveway and everything. It was a perfect situation. All you had to do was put up a new building where the current footprint was, and it would bother anybody in the neighborhood. But the neighbors were concerned, and now I see why. When I came here, I saw why they were concerned. It just threw off all the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Then I find out that there's been a lot of conversations between the developer and 42 Hudson Street. People going in and out of that house, talking. I have no idea what was being said. And I'm wondering, why is this? Then I find out that the value of a house can be determined by the spacing between houses. Was that part of the conversation? I ask you. So I'm here tonight asking this planning board, you have a 5-foot variance there. I don't know why you want to make it smaller. It doesn't help us. I'm asking you to review that. Also, Ms. Teagle did a lot of research on the planning of this, the plans and the application system. And there's a lot of errors in there. A lot of errors. And should this thing be approved, I would imagine that litigation would bring these errors out and look at the village and say, how come you didn't find these errors? So I want you to consider all these factors before you approve this, because it is impacting our family as a whole and our community. And our community in Sleepy Hollow is very small, as you read in my letter. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question regarding, I know the variance that was approved, I know the distance of your building to the lot line. Do you know what the distance between the buildings is at its narrowest versus also, I know it's not parallel, Like,
Right.
what is the distances, I guess?
Right, so 48 Hudson is approximately 1 foot away from the property line.
Okay.
So it'll be 1 foot plus 3 feet.
And is that at the tightest condition, or?
Yes.
Okay. And then it gets slightly
It gets
more
more.
space after
Mhm.
that? Okay. I will say, just for the benefit of those that haven't been to previous meetings, this application, I think Sean can speak to when it first came before us, was it June of 2022?
The original planning board application.
Correct. So, and it has evolved, and this is its fourth, I believe, iteration. And part of what I think went from it being on one side to the other, originally they were going to try and use the original foundation, but at some point it became clear there was no point in doing that. We actually were stressing that they go set their house back, unlike the existing house that's over the right-of-way. We wanted to make sure they were set back, similar to both neighboring buildings. And so they looked at that, and by the time they did that, they were starting again from scratch building, and they weren't going to be using the foundation, so they were no longer tied to that existing foundation. They were trying to negotiate getting parking on the site more than currently exists, so they'd be asking for less variance. And I think at one meeting, that because the lot line that is shared with you is not straight back, but, how to say, jogs back and gets tighter in the back, when they had a driveway on the north side and trying to get to the back, the maneuvering was even tighter than it currently is now in the iteration where the driveway's to the south. And there was a comment made here at a meeting of, had they looked at flipping it to see if that would improve their condition. So just those were part of the evolution of the project that has arrived to where it is now. Besides the reason you said that once if they flip it like they have, then they have more southern exposure into those apartments. But I appreciate all comments received. We do take them really seriously. I always encourage community members to do such, and we're here listening. Does any other members of the public or board have any questions or comments to make?
Is this a superimposed image of the building from a photograph?
Yeah, it's a rendering.
But like, are the other
it's,
buildings rendered, or are
The
they?
buildings are rendered.
So, okay. Because I noticed that the neighboring building looked different in your rendering
Right,
than the photo before it.
right.
For instance, there's a fence and all the bigger windows.
So if this parking maneuverability issue is kind of one of the drivers, I mean, can you walk us through that? Again, I'm not privy to all these previous meetings, but, I think it's important in light of the comments here that there's a clear understanding of why this isn't on the side of the property that the current building is.
Yes. So, let me take you to the site plan, actually. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the previous site plans here that I could just throw up here and so you can compare it. But, so basically you see the lot right here has a jog. So it goes back,
What is that jog?
and then it jogs this way, and then it jogs.
What's the blue hatching there?
The blue hatch is an easement agreement that we have with 48 Hudson, and we actually went through their attorney in order to draft that easement agreement. And so what was agreed to was that we gave up this part of the land, which is owned by 46 Hudson, and we allowed them use and enjoyments of this part. And in return, we got this sliver here in the back. And the reason we wanted that sliver in the back was because that gives us the opportunity to put 3 parking spaces in the back instead of 2, because originally only 2 parking spaces would fit.
So was that agreement, to support this specific site plan, or was that to support, when did that come about? Did that come about when the driveway was on the property line with 48?
Yeah, it came about before the driveway got flipped to the other side. Yeah. But even then, as Kirsten mentioned in the previous iterations, by having a driveway on this side, basically your car would have to come back and then sort of do a turn, but then the building got in the way in order to maneuver into these parking spaces. It did end up being a little bit more difficult, and it made it more smooth by having a more continuous curved transition from the driveway into the parking spots, which could only happen on this side.
And so this 48 Hudson, what's the setback on their property line from building to property line?
You mean on the front or on the side?
Their side setback.
Their side is about a foot at the minimum.
So it's within the variance that's been granted to 46, I think, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and
No,
What's that?
the building at 48 is a foot away from their property line. So additional 3 feet, so between the building and the building is going to be 4 feet,
Yeah, roughly.
roughly.
So what I'm asking is, so
And just so you know, that's usually part of, when you're situating buildings, that's one of the things that they look for as part of the 5 factors of the zoning variance.
It's not really for us to say. But
No, I'm
you're-
I'm trying to understand.
You're trying to understand
I'm
if
trying to understand.
their space is less,
Yeah.
or it's not conforming either, let's just say that.
Correct.
They
Yeah,
have
so
it.
their building, their closest building face is 1 foot off of the property line. And yours is the property line and 3 feet. Okay.
And might I add, originally, the existing building is 1'5" away from 42 Hudson Street.
And how far,
Is there a basement?
In the existing building?
No, right now, in this design.
Yeah. So this is actually the basement floor.
Can you
It's
zoom
on
in?
the site plan. So there are 2 steps over here.
Oh, it's,
That lead
yeah,
down.
it's not, it's not a cellar.
Right, not a cellar.
since we have some members that have just joined our board, I propose that we keep the public hearing open and adjourn until next month, and then allow them to fully get up to speed with the proposal before us, before we take any vote. But if anyone has any other comments or questions tonight, please feel free to, yep.
Yeah, I just want to make another comment.
Yes.
At the zoning board approval meeting,
Mhm.
I had stated that, and I thought it was more of a solution.
Mhm.
And I said that instead of moving the driveway from between 48 and 46, you could have left it there as it is, and between 46 and 42, where their building was virtually slapped right up against each other,
Mhm.
you could have given it a 5-foot variance there. That way, at least that owner on 42 could have at least been able to have room between his building, which he never had before, or his owner never had before.
Mhm.
But at the zoning board meeting, they told us that, well, you couldn't dictate to a developer or the owner which side the driveway is going to be on.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, that's what I'm saying, okay now. So I said, okay, you said, first it was 2 feet 7 inches that you were going to have between 48 and 46, meaning that north side setback.
Mhm.
And now I'm saying that, you know, for purposes of repairing, if you have just 3 feet, you got to set up a ladder. It's too steep of a pitch, which I already said.
Mhm.
And it would be more advantageous to have it at 3 feet, 10 inches.
Thank you. Is there any fence now or proposed between the two lots on the lot line?
Yes, that was part of the easement agreement as well,
Okay,
and we constructed the fence,
okay.
and they have rights to the fence.
Has there been, it sounds like, maintenance is of a concern. And I don't know if this is the planning board's purview, but I mean, is there opportunity for agreements for access to, for this situation where we're talking about, you have 3 feet, so there's basically 4 feet there now at the skinniest between the two. I mean, has there been discussions about potential, maintenance agreements between the two properties to alleviate some of those concerns?
So as part of the easement agreement, there actually is a stipulation in there that both sides have access to each other's properties in order to maintain the properties.
And that easement agreement extends the entire property line between 46 and 48?
Yeah, it encompasses both properties.
Okay.
And can the fence panels be removed easy enough if one wanted to put a ladder in between buildings?
I imagine so. It's a standard Home Depot fence.
Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, okay, I move to adjourn the public hearing until the April 20th, 2023 meeting.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just because I'm sitting in for David today,
Yeah.
polling the board, this is not a vote. Should he be directed to draft some type of resolution on this or not?
I think just to be prepared.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think,
Okay.
You know, we're always looking to streamline things, so.
exactly. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 135 Beekman Avenue. Hello?
Good evening, Chairperson, members of the board, staff, Maximilian Mahal, the law firm of Cuddy and Fader, on the behalf of the applicant. We are returning before this board for architectural review, just for some context for some of the new members. It's been quite the journey over the course of several years now, I guess. But this was a proposal for a multifamily development at 135 Beekman Avenue. This matter has been heard at various times before the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Board of Trustees, the Planning Board, and now we return for architectural review. The review before the Board of Trustees resulted in a change of law and updates to guidelines, and then Planning Board approval was granted January of this year. Now, what we're focusing on now is the architectural elements as we undergo the architectural review board process. Now, we understand from conversations with this board during its site plan review and as articulated in the resolution that was associated with the site plan review, there were a couple elements related to the site plan that had to be addressed, just details that had to be ironed out as part of the building permitting process. We have been meeting with staff. There was a meeting with staff just in the last several weeks to go over some of those elements. And I understand that a revised site plan just to address some of those technical items was submitted this past Monday. So that is in the file to be reviewed. Just wanted to note that so we are all up to date on that front.
If you can just pause on that note, James, did you receive that, or is there still more revisions to be coming?
I've had a conversation with the engineer, and he sent me an interim, informal
Okay.
revised plan, but I instructed him to make sure it was a formal submission to the building department, to make sure it was part of the record.
Okay.
So to my knowledge, that has not been done yet.
And Pam, did any new drawings come in, the updated civil drawings we did get?
I didn't come up with a site plan.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, I just didn't analyze them, but yes.
Yeah, looking at the folder while you're talking.
So
Was landscaping included in that as well, or no?
Just to clarify, so these were items just to address some of the technical elements of following the site plan approval, the conditions that they are in.
Right.
The landscaping plan is still being prepared,
Okay.
because as part of the resolution for the site plan, landscaping was left to be finalized as part of the architectural review.
Okay.
So it's kind of two simultaneous paths. One is working with staff on just getting those conditions addressed from the resolution. The other is progressing the architectural review.
Okay.
Yep.
So the landscape plan is still forthcoming?
Yes.
Okay.
But just to confirm then with staff, if I may, we should probably all be on the same page to make sure everything was submitted, that needs to be submitted. So if there's anything that's missing, please let us know. But I think the submission that you brought in on Monday, our architects from Best Load Associates dropped off, should be in the
Maybe
system.
let's touch base tomorrow or something, because I did receive the Vasilati
Okay.
plans as part of this month's submission, but the site engineering plans came later in just an email to me, and I responded, make sure you submit these to the building department.
Okay.
I don't know if that was done.
Yeah,
So we can touch base tomorrow about that. That's the HEC plans, not the Vasilati plans.
Understood. Happy to do that. We'll make sure that all those Ts are crossed. and
yeah, we
I's
didn't
dotted.
receive those yet.
Yep.
We only received the architectural drawings.
And I don't want to jump the gun, but you mentioned a landscaping plan. Also, we're looking for an updated lighting plan as well.
So if I may, just one note on that item. The lighting plan, I understand that is part of the other technical elements to be addressed as a result of the site plan resolution. Can that be, the discussion of the lighting plan, is that still part of the discussion of those conditional items versus we're in front of the architectural review board, we're focusing on the architectural elements and the landscaping elements per the resolution? I just want to make sure I, make it clear the point of the review by the architectural review board versus technical review by staff and consultants.
I think there's a lot of overlap with a lot of those plans and designs. I think it makes sense to consider them all right now. You're here now, you're working on it. You're working on a landscaping plan. Lighting plan kind of works with that. I would encourage you to work on them all at the same time and get them in as soon as possible so we can look at them all.
The revised lighting plan was submitted.
That one I didn't see. I saw the last time you were here, there was a lighting plan, there was a photometric plan and a lighting
That
plan
was updated.
that were in disagreement though.
Yeah.
On the latest submission, was that,
It was updated, yes.
oh, I'm sorry, I must have missed that. When you get to it, could you bring that up and just point it out?
I thought it was part of the site plan approval, so I'd have to see if I have it.
It was not part of the site plan
Oh,
approval.
yeah, that was my bad. I thought it was the landscaping and the building were part of the architecture.
That's, I think, he's just speaking to also my point in terms of, based on this, the conditions in the resolution, we have elements to be addressed with staff, really say it's addressed with staff, as part of the building permitting process versus what's under the purview of the architectural review board being the architectural impact. And based on the resolution, landscaping was assigned to the architectural review board, the final landscaping plan review. So I'm just hoping that out of respect to the board's time, if we can address the architectural elements, and we heard the comments during the work session earlier, so we know there are comments on the architectural elements, but if there's any final technical items that don't necessarily impact the architectural appearance, don't fall within the architectural jurisprudence, that any final items that have to be addressed during building permitting, as would typically be addressed during building permitting, that process continues as it normally would.
I think there are a lot of details that can be dealt with that way. As far as the lighting plan goes though, like I said, there's a lot of crossover with the lighting and the landscaping. And I think it's a good opportunity to look at them both at the same time.
So I think on that front then, because we'll be coming back with the landscaping plan, we'll have the lighting plan package, and then as long as those other just, typical technical elements that we don't necessarily want to utilize the board's valuable time for.
You know what, I think a lot of that has been resolved in the interim plan that I saw anyway. So
Okay.
I think that might be a moot point.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, and happy to keep lines of communication open. That was point number 3 of my 3 points, so I.
Sorry to throw you off. Go back to where you were.
Just going back to point 1 then, so we made a submission just for the architectural review board consisting of elevations and renderings. Our architects, Facility Associates, is here this evening just to go through those. And then we will discuss just the pending discussion items from the work session that we heard. But any comments that you wanted to share, feel free on the submission that you guys made. Thanks.
One of the comments at the last meeting was to include items that might be on the roof. So we gave approximate locations of mechanical units, a screen around the mechanical units, some roof, some fans, some vents, as requested. I'm sorry if I need to introduce myself. I'm Chris Badley from Bass-Lottie Architects, representing the Alessi family. And then on the elevations,
Sorry, do you have renderings of the screenings that you're talking about for the roof? And
from the renderings we have, I mean, this one's taken some so far back, it's probably not realistic. We do not have it, you know, as viewed from the street here, I don't think the fencing would be seen. I didn't submit this to the board, but I did draw a street view. This is a 6-foot person from in front of our building versus across the street. And this is their line of sight. This back here is the mechanical units that have the screen. So even from across the street, you're really not going to see the screening. And from front of the building, you're not going to see the mechanical units either.
sure, I guess if you're on top of the building as a resident, you would see the screening.
A resident of our building?
Mhm.
Yes, they would see. Oh, I don't have a rendering of that, no.
Okay. It'd be good to see that at some point.
Also, I think your renderings, do you have an updated rendering that shows the elevator tower as you have it drawn in the elevations?
No. I mean, this one here, you know, there's landscaping around it, so you're really not going to see it. It's, you know, it's 30 feet back from the street face. Yeah, no, it's one that's not updated.
Yeah, I think for us it's important it is, since it's such a prominent vertical element that will be seen by neighbors. So to have those renderings updated to show us what that's going to look like is important.
If I
Yeah.
may, Madam Chair, just to confirm, so as articulated by Chris, and I won't waste the board's time reinforcing too much, but obviously that tower will be set back away, so it'll be hard to see from the street. We have heard the conversation though about updating the rendering to show that, and we'll be coming back with the landscaping plan as is, so we can include that. But I would ask any other comments that the board might have. Just if there's any final items that also need to be included, just if we could hear those comments, because to be blunt, every time we print, it costs a lot of money to prepare all the renderings and all the plans, and so if we could all get it together into one package. We do feel very strongly about this design. We're excited for the design. We feel it works well for the community. We've put a lot of time, as you know, and work and collaborative efforts with the village. So we are excited to see this design go forward as is, just with these final kind of items addressed. But any comments the board might have, be open to them, just so we can get a full list.
Absolutely, I think that's what we're covering
Exactly.
tonight. So
We're
if
on
you
the-
want to take notes, we're definitely,
Oh.
it's going to be in our minutes.
Yep.
Yep, you'll have everything.
Thank you.
I think you're right. I know maybe in this view, because you've got the tree, the tower is going to be a small new addition to add in that rendering. But if one thinks about the experience coming down Beekman, I think that tower is going to be seen popping out, you know, how to say, behind the neighboring buildings. And just to, so everyone's clear what's coming, there's no surprises later, just I think whatever we can do to show that is helpful. And even a comparison to like, okay, here's the church over here, this is where, you know, if you want to do a cross-section that shows those heights too, that might help. But at this point, it was mainly just some kind of rendering that's basically asking your renderings to be up to date to your design that's in the plans and elevations.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to, for the sake of efficiency, would it be possible maybe we pick one, like the most direct visual line to the tower to show that rendering, instead of doing 4 renderings where you might not even see it from the other side of the building.
I think once you build the model and picking the views isn't going to be the hard part, but we can go through the views right now and see if which ones seem the most
I think that'd be
important.
helpful just to narrow it down, I appreciate that. So I think we have one from,
Also, I noticed the colors, I think, that you're presenting to us as your finished materials haven't been updated in most of the renderings either. I don't know if there was one that maybe is accurate, if you could just speak to that.
I'll have to defer to my team on that. In the final package, we have to make sure everything is up to date. But Chris, if you have any thoughts on the color of these renderings, feel free.
Unless you did bring samples with them?
Oh, stuff, yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
So these are the different renderings while we're waiting, the different angles. The tower is going to be here on the eastern side, tucked in the back. So I would think, you know what? I don't want to play with a folder that I'm not familiar with. Learned the wrong way to do that. So Chris, I don't know if you want to pull up.
Don't let the attorney.
Yeah.
Technical.
Yeah, that's always dangerous. So that's one rendering. Probably looking for the most preferential angle to show the tower from.
I mean, this, I guess, would be the most visual angle of the tower. But at the same time, it's still between these two buildings. But I mean, I guess this one would best show the tower. I don't think from the,
Are the street
I don't
trees
think
you're
from
showing
this-
in the, sorry to interrupt, are the street trees you're showing in your renderings accurate to what's actually existing, or are they just placed in to make the rendering look nice?
this tree is existing.
The one in front of your building? Or the one next to it?
This one here?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the neighbor's tree. This is our tree that's existing. That's a pole. And, you know, the rest is proposed landscape. I don't think you would really see the stair tower from this angle. I think it's far enough back.
I think the point is, we're also looking at it from the neighbors who are on the side, the neighbors who are farther back off of Kendall, and so we really need to see it accurately depicted. Everything, all the finishes exactly as you want them, and that would really streamline this architectural review board process if we can actually see exactly what you plan for the building from all angles.
Understood, and on that note, we actually have samples, I think, from the materials you guys wanted to utilize, if that's okay, we turn to those.
Sure.
Great.
How are you? I'm Sal Leshy. So I guess we should show you guys the siding. It's a hardy siding. If we were probably between these two colors, which is very similar to the rendering. This one's a little lighter, one's a little darker. Going together with the FIPON railings you see on the balconies. That's all FIPON trim, obviously to match the white on the railings. This is FIPON columns. You see by all the columns.
You say it's FIPON?
That's the brand, the manufacturer is FIPON.
Is it a kind of, like a
It's
plastic?
composite.
Composite.
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
It goes around the structural element of, you know.
Perfect.
And then we had the slate roof on the roof line. This is probably not the color, but very similar to this. It's more in the gray family. I don't know if you can see that castle gray right there. But it's actually very similar to this color. It's awful, but these are pretty much everything you see out there.
And the shutters?
Shutters are just black shutters. white windows, and all the trim is all from the same manufacturer, Phi-Pon and AZAC.
When you say white windows, do you mean the trim around the windows?
The trim around the
And
windows,
the
correct.
windows themselves?
Sorry?
The window themselves?
The windows themselves are Anderson,
What, and what color?
white.
Okay, are those,
Because we're showing them, yeah, we showed them in white, right? Oh,
It looks
no, actually, they're black, I'm sorry, they're black windows. Yeah, we actually have them names. Oh, crystal, right? Crystal? But it's a black window, I apologize.
Okay.
Black window with a white surround. So basically, the black window, one of,
Well, that works, yeah, I was gonna.
we'll take your opinion if you like. Sure if the lighter or the darker looks better. It's in between those. It's pretty-
So I have a question on this particular elevation here. So there's quite a bit of, there's actually quite a bit of like articulation on all of the faces of the buildings with these balconies and things going on. This front panel here is pretty, you know, I'd say just fairly flat. Was there any thought or consideration on adding some architectural elements there to kind of give it a little bit, you know?
It was actually flat. We actually set it back. That was an old comment about a year ago.
Okay.
It was actually completely flat in the front, and we said, we went over this and actually set it back.
Sure, yeah, just like this kind of style of building, just like I've seen this style kind of more historical. A lot of times there's actually a lot more structure in and around the window. Like typically the window casing or framing or something is you know, a lot chunkier, if you will.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's shown correctly as far as scale-wise. We could beef those up. You know what I'm saying?
It feels like everything's got a lot of kind
The
of.
problem is
interesting things going on.
the shutters are almost touching. I mean, how would that look though? Seeing less siding in between the shutters. You know, I mean, we're open, but, you know, the thing is, you touch one thing and everything else moves.
The shutters are too narrow.
Yeah, was it
The shutters are
They're too narrow.
too narrow, so we have wider shutters.
Yeah, should be.
We're not gonna have any siding left. We don't need siding.
Should be half the size of the window, right?
I'm sorry?
Should be half the size of the window.
Correct. I mean, that looks about right, no?
So, as with the other
That
comments.
looks about right.
We'll make sure all the plan documents speak to one another. I do think, from my opinion, and our architectural team can also opine on this, but I do think the proposal as is, it's a nice balance of articulation in the front with the double balcony, with the flatter side on the left side. It doesn't overdo it, I think, but it also, it reflects the surrounding community, I think, nicely, in terms of that range of articulation. So we will confirm, though, that the shutters are the right size, but and also keep in mind, 3D modulations aren't always necessarily to a T, to the exact inch of the design spec, based on the programming to be utilized, but we'll make sure that everything can be as tight as possible.
What height is your window heads on the first floor?
Off the
No,
floor?
the window, yeah.
Oh, you mean the top of it?
Yeah, how tall is it?
I think it's 6'8", 7 foot. I think it's 6'8".
You know, because you got a lot of siding between the head of the first floor window and
Right.
the sill of the second floor.
Yep.
You know, typically you want the first floor to be taller.
We could probably squeeze a little bit out of them, but it
Well,
might
first
cause
floor,
a problem on the side of the building with the,
Well, that's why, you know, figure it out and see if it works. and-
Is the cornice that same material?
yes,
So everything, all trim, everything is that?
correct.
And,
How do the
you
gutters
just take a
work?
look at the, your,
How do the gutters work?
They're
Am
on
I
the
seeing
exterior.
them,
It's on,
just on the face of the cornice.
Okay. It's another thing to squeeze in the shutters.
Sean?
Yeah, and just check your balconies on in the roof level. It looks like the rendering has them flush, but the elevation has them extending out.
It was a mistake on the rendering.
Yeah, I think the underscore is the renderings. Yep.
Clean up,
Understood. I know during the work session, there was a comment about the tower being shown on the elevations. I did look at the elevations again. Chris, if you want to pull up the elevations, they are there. It's just a little faint. Actually, if you just move to the right here. So I've asked our team just to make that a little darker so you can see that. But they are there. They're just a little dark. Or excuse me, a little light. Yeah, so we'll make sure that's articulated. But I just wanted to note for the record that they were in there.
And the heights you verify with like the elevator you're going to use, and you know that what that height you're showing us is accurate to what will be built.
I did have a comment about the rooftop. So there was a question about the railing and visibility of the mechanicals. And I do think it's fair at this point just to start, to think about the programming of that space. I see it as a sun space. But with that, the sun can be intense, and it, in terms of looking at your landscape plan, it might be a nice opportunity to think about how planters in that space might function, and to make sure that you have water access or anything that would add to the enjoyment of that space, and also add something that might soften the heating of a roof. Also, in terms of that section, the left-hand section on the front view, one of the renderings has a very small tree on the lower left, and then one of the renderings has a more sizable tree, like a small dogwood or something in that. So
Right, well, the landscaping is being updated, so.
Okay. Because that
only that it's accurate as the street tree at this point.
Because having a large shrub or a small tree in that space then also does interface with the architecture in a way that can add texture and
in the front yard.
Yeah, just so that, because that one view is rather stark compared to the so the view facing northeast that we had. Yeah, so right now the little red tree looks just more like a bush or like a small shrub.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
great.
all changing.
So I look forward to seeing the update. Thank you.
We're getting native trees. So that's not a native tree.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I ask this every single project that comes before the board. Any consideration on solar on this building? Look like there's some available roof space. Is there ever any thought of tapping into some of the available free money to do that?
We're going to consider solar. We haven't really thought about it yet, but it's definitely on the table.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a really good opportunity. Your building's quite tall, so you don't have issues with trees and things that can affect that. I mean, it's something that have a winter like we had this winter, and you're like, maybe we should start taking it serious. So,
if I may, on that point, we are definitely exploring it. Just at this stage, it might be more of a long-term plan, just based on finances and the market and such, and moving forward. But we will definitely look into it, and obviously undergo any of the required review processes by the village when we are able to make a decision on that. I don't know if it's going to be a short-term decision, but we hear the comment and we are considering it. But for now, this is the plan as proposed with all the caveats we've heard about updating the documents. We feel strongly about the design as is, but we're keeping it in mind. Just wanted to clarify.
Would you at least make it solar ready?
Not sure what that would necessarily
They'll
entail.
run conductors to the roof and just leave them there to make it so.
Well, we're gonna,
I mean,
Leave a space for your
yeah, leave a
panels.
shaft to run conductors to the roof. I mean, I'm sure.
This way it makes it easier for you to decide to do it.
Just want to clarify: is a roof rendering is gonna be a necessity?
Well, I think for the rendering, it was kind of a twofold thing. It was, one, make sure the rendering speaks with the plans, and two, the rendering to, as part of that, the rendering incorporating the tower from the pertinent angles where residents will see it.
Okay, tower is what I'm saying. Do you guys need a rendering of the actual roof as part of the architectural review?
You had a question about the screening and being able to see what that actually is going to look like.
Yeah, exactly, especially
you-
since you're using it as an amenity space.
Okay. Even though it's
just
not,
like
even though it's not seen from the street.
Even though.
It will be seen by neighbors. I mean, you have multi-story buildings on all
Okay.
sides of you, so they will
That's
be
fine.
looking,
We'll work on
I say they'll be off the street looking up across at you.
You know, and sometimes it's an example of materials, that kind of thing.
Right.
I'd like to say a word. If, I'm not sure whether the board, well, everyone on the board has, been through the whole process since this project began. But as most of you know, the plans have been modified, I don't know, 25 times, 30 times. So, and that's for various reasons. So not everything has been coordinated and put together with the latest set. Okay, so we will present the next time that we're here, fully updated renderings, and like Maximilian said, if there's any other items that you would like to see at the next meeting, if you would be kind enough to tell us now, so that we don't have another meeting after that.
Yeah, no, we just ask for exactly what you just said, that everything be up to date and coincide with each other and reflect the current design that you've got. So.
We're all on the same
Thank you.
page.
Yeah, so we will see you in
I have a
April.
question.
Yeah.
Were we limited to this space as far as this square footage?
No.
So we can extend this out?
Yes.
Okay. There's no objections to that? Okay. Ed, you had made a comment. Would you like to see some kind of pergola up there for sun protection?
I don't start another.
She wants sun.
Sal, let's go.
I don't want that to be one of the comments.
You know, I'm just being realistic, that if I were to, if I were a resident in this building, take that as a, hypothetical, I would probably want some kind of shade. And and that would be part of why I would buy into this amenity space. If it was not there, it would be an issue of trying to advocate for that to make it, an enjoyable all-day space. And so then that becomes a design feature, and because you're coming before the board and creating renderings and thinking about the design and how that looks from all around, I will leave that to you to make those decisions about what, but I think that as an amenity space, that it becomes part of the architectural feel and design, as does the railing. It's a safety, the railing is a safety feature and requirement, but, it's an amenity feature that we are seeing as we look at things from Edge on Hudson. There's lots of spaces there with these outdoor porches, et cetera. So I think it's something that's seen and part of market new construction.
I think we hear the comment. Let's discuss and we'll discuss it
Yeah,
with
it's
our
not a
team.
requirement, it's just
Yeah.
something to consider.
Yep, I appreciate the comment.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we look forward to seeing you next month, April 20th.
Great. Madam Chair, members of the board, staff, thank you so much.
Yep.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have 305 North Washington.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Gregory Ketchapoli, design engineer on the project at 305 North Washington Ave. Just a little backstory for the new members. Originally, we started out with a 5-family residence.
Sorry, we just want to be able to hear you. Yeah. Thank you.
So originally, we started with a, let me get to this site plan. Originally, we started with a 5-family, multifamily dwelling with different parking scenarios. I think this is our 3rd iteration. And now we've brought it down to a 3-family dwelling with the corresponding on-site parking requirements. Did I just do that? So first I'd like to just start by discussing the structure itself and the aesthetics. Last time we were before the board, there were some comments regarding the front porch, and because there's a lot of porches in the neighborhood, which we agreed with and incorporated that into our revision. There were comments regarding dormers and material use and using different materials. We tried to address all of those comments in our redesign. The intent of the structure is to be a multifamily dwelling. I overheard that. What we're looking to do is there's going to be 1 meter, 1 water meter, and the owner will have sub-meters if he'd like for his for whoever is living in the structure. The utility plan, may show different right now, but my approach for this submittal was to try and get past the planning phase and make sure that I had a site that everybody was on board with before I started addressing any of the technical aspects, so I just wanted to make that clear as well. All materials on the structure will be hardy plank, well, the siding material on the structure will be hardy plank. We have a blue and gray combination. Windows will be white Anderson. Trim will be PVC. Columns are also wrapped in PVC. And that's about it for this. Oh, in the rear, we did take note of the comment regarding dormers and roof overhangs above the doors. And as far as the structure goes, I believe that's the bulk of it. Is there any comments?
Yeah, show us the plans.
Sure. Floor plans, correct?
Correct.
So right now we're actually going to go with an unfinished basement.
Okay.
With a just lawn washer dryer down there. Here is the first floor plan.
Are there no windows into the basement anymore, or are there still windows?
There is windows in the basement and along the rear. I'll show you that in a minute. So first floor plan, family room, kitchen, half bath, closet. Second floor plan, we have 2 bedrooms in each unit with 2 bathrooms, en suites, and that's it on the second floor.
And the attic is accessible
The
or not?
attic is storage only.
For each individual unit has its own attic
Correct.
space?
Is that just like a pull-down ladder?
Right.
Okay.
And as far as the structure goes, is there any additional comments from the board?
Any thought yet on mechanical systems that you're going to be
Yes,
utilizing?
heat is going to be all electric heat pumps. It's going to be electric. And as far as, well, that's heating and cooling. And gas, we are going to have some natural gas for the stoves and any other appliances, I guess, necessary. because we do have access to it, so we are just gonna reuse the existing service and get as many BTU as Con Ed allows us to. And sewer service is there as well. And
Yeah. I would encourage you to think about going fully electric. There's great incentives right now and reasons to do such. If you're only bringing the gas in for the stove cooking. you
something
could
we
look-
can absolutely.
Yeah, you could look at
consider.
induction, you could look at, an electric option. That's better for the tenants, and these are gonna be rentals, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But you haven't placed on the site yet any of the condensing units or that would go along with your heat pumps, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, the site. Yes, I did leave 2 labels on parking spots that are actually to remain. So, parking number 3 and 4 are not going to be removed. It was from a previous plan, I'm sure you may have recognized. Parking number 2 definitely needs to be removed. Parking number 1 is questionable. I didn't receive any comment on it. I'm not necessarily 100% comfortable with it, but I don't really want to sacrifice it if I don't have to. So that's where I stand in regards to this parking scenario.
The driveway east of it?
Yes, but what I was thinking is just ease of, like, when you back out here, if the entrance is over here, then you gotta like kind of, I guess, I ran it through the vehicle program and CAD, and it was tough, but it is possible. You may have to just make an extra. And in the rear, there were some comments regarding having, everybody having their own space. And we tried to accomplish that. You'll see that in the landscape plan. We actually did bring a landscape architect on board. He'll be discussing that next. These are the window wells for the basement light here. There was a
Can you show the basement plan?
No, because it's just going to be unfinished with a washer or dryer down there.
But the utilities are going in there, correct?
Correct. Yes.
How do you get to the basement? And is it all one basement, or is it going to be divided per unit?
Individuals. The Westchester Modular didn't provide us with a basement plan on this iteration because we told them we wanted it unfinished, and I guess they just...
Someone's going to build the foundation.
Right, 100%. So
we should probably see that.
No problem.
How it's accessible, where the utilities are.
100%. The village planner did make a great comment regarding backup space. It is something that I considered, but I was hesitant because of the whole balance between green space and too much pavement. 25-foot backup space isn't comfortable. I mean, it's like borderline what it could be. So, and right now, after doing about a 3-foot shift, so just to be clear, this is the actual setback line requirement. This is the average that was taken measuring all of the setbacks for the homes on the street. And this is where I'm placing the home. So we were already at about a 40% variance, and then with the extra 3 feet, I'm up to a 57%. So I don't know how that's going to...
You're talking about impervious? Or are you talking about
I'm
distance
talking
of the
about,
setback? Sorry.
Right, I'm talking about the setback relationship. So I don't know how that's going to present to the board, but we're going to go for that. And then if we fall short, then we'll come back with that adjusted again. I believe, so...
How's the backup space or parking space number 1?
Right, so we were able to get 28 feet here, 28.1 feet.
That's a compact space.
With a compact space, right, which I think is with a regular vehicle, the fact that he can't cut the wheel to utilize this area. I've changed it to a compact car with the recommendation of the planner. Any suggestions?
I actually think all the parking should be moved off that property line. There should be a buffer there.
So between here and the front of the spaces?
Yeah, we're gonna have vehicles plowing into that wall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need wheel stops. and
Noted.
You may want to do something with landscaping, maybe create a curb. and a
He
buffer
actually
for the
wanted
overhang.
that. He wanted that. He wanted that.
Listen to him.
So that's the site plan in general. You did also ask for a walk to the existing walkway on Howard Street.
How deep is the porch?
4 feet.
4 feet?
Yeah.
It's too narrow to even sit on. It's 4
Right.
feet, and then you're gonna have a column and a railing on it. But you don't have anything left.
All right. Something we discussed last time too. I mean, we are battling variances. We're already only 7.6 feet off the property line on Howard Street. We got the rear patio touching the rear property line here. So we're trying to find balance. Doing our best. Landscape plan, Mr. Dave Delarty can start discussing his plan for the landscape.
Yeah, my name's David, I'm from Nature View Design Group, and, yeah.
You want to start here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
So, basically I just tried to, look at the fabric around the property, realizing that there's not one tree on there, try to soften the building a little bit. So, I spec'd out some larger shade trees along this side here. These are pine locusts. That one,
Sorry, our tech guy is gonna yell
You
at
could
you
use
if
this.
you don't use the
Okay.
cursor.
You can
Yeah.
just point the cursor.
Only because that's
I
what
like to
people at
point to
home
you,
see.
Right. Yeah, so these,
Thank you.
yeah, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so these are all honey locusts, good street trees, really salt tolerant. They'll provide some coverage, keep the building in scale. On the back end, also help with, heat gain from the parking lot, I had thought maybe to even put another one in here, but, we'd have to use like structural soils and, watering and things like that, and nutrients wouldn't be great, so, left that out, but, in the back here, I know this is a parking lot over here as well, so, these are also smaller shade trees, are winter king hawthorn, another great tree, great fall color. This has great fall color too. These are all yellow in the fall. These are like a burgundy. And I thought this would help also just minimize the structure and give shade to these back areas and some enclosure. Since I'm back here, in between each patio, I spec'd out a privacy wall, basically 6x6s with I didn't get a graphic on this, but it would match the siding on the house. It would be a horizontal, basically just looking hardy board, looking just like the house. So it kind of brings the architecture into the yard a little bit. And then, as far as continuing with plantings, these three are American holly, which I figured let's get some winter interest on this side, let them kind of with this facade here, it would help minimize that, and then a planting row along here. These are all natives. I spec'd everything from the recommendations you had provided for us, a list. So, this is Joe Pieweed, a very, great perennial little blue stem. I do have, is there a way to get the
Yes.
the
If you
photos?
keep scrolling, you should get them.
Okay, all right, yeah, so.
There's a plan list.
Plan list. Right, so that's the Winter King Hawthorn, and that's it in regular. I'm going to talk to you about that with fencing. That's Joe Pyeweed. That's your American Holly. So this is that's a Crocus, basically a hydrangea that's on the native plant list, which was very nice. And those would be going over here as a hedge, flowering. This is Ilex glabra, these in front, which is more of an evergreen, more of a hedgy shrub type thing. It gives, just to complement the front. And then the fencing is another major portion of this, around the perimeter. So we noticed in the comments that you had mentioned about the parking needs to have a solid fence, at least 5 feet. I noticed on the site plan, on the site photos, this neighbor had a 6-foot high, wood fence. Looked like just a nice Home Depot picket fence. I was proposing to use a vinyl fence, but they could get kind of overwhelming. So, so that would be on this side and this side here as privacy, and then it would pick up with 3-foot picket over here along these edges. And so what I thought to do to make this not so overbearing was to add this vine. I mean, it's trumpet vine, which is like, it just would, maybe not this crazy, and dense, but it's another very hardy vine. It's salt tolerant, and I think it would break up, because we have such limited. I was like thinking about that, kind of this buffer area. How do you deal with this like asphalt, and then you have this, fence, right? So just to soften up this here and even along here, to plant these trumpet vines in whatever, I said, give me a foot at least, like if we have some planting medium or something in here, maybe we make this a little bigger so that there's a curb cut, so that we have a stop for the tires, and then we have more plant, we can make this a little bigger even. So, that was basically that.
You'd attach a trellis to the fence for it to...
Yeah, we'd have to, I mean, it's like one of those vines I really like, have you ever, do you know that vine? It's like,
Yeah,
it's very
I do.
aggressive, so it doesn't need much, it could just, hang on the fence itself. And then the only other material, I mean, this is what I was proposing, just a nice Cambridge type paver, to go in that front walkway area. Over in here. For this and for the patios. And, that's basically, some lawn area over here. This would be lawn mixed in so that there's a little bit of room. That's basically it.
Just to clarify, the plans we're seeing right now, were they submitted to the building department before today, or we're seeing them for the first time now?
First
correct?
time you're
Okay.
seeing them, yeah, it was like a,
No, I really appreciate it. It definitely has evolved for the better from what you had submitted, so I appreciate all of the additional plantings and thought that's gone into it. Anybody else have comments or questions in general for the submittal?
Looks
I mean,
great.
think that pretty well covered it. I was real happy to see the street trees. I mean, I think that's something that's a ongoing issue.
Yeah.
So I think that's really good. What is the parking requirement on this? Is it 6? How many bedrooms is it?
Yes.
2 bedrooms each, yes.
Okay.
So the variances you'd be seeking are related to the setbacks?
Correct.
Only?
That's correct.
I think with each iteration, it improves. And in an effort to expedite so that we keep things moving, we were going to recommend that you have a meeting with staff and consultants before our next planning board meeting so that you can continue to resolve issues that have come up that we've mentioned thus far, so that you're even, one step ahead when you come before us next. Does that sound?
Can we just, can you just recap the outstanding issues right now, please, for me?
Sure. I know one question that came up, but I think you did address it, but I can ask the consultants if they agree. There was a question, I know, between whether you're doing townhomes or multifamily home. And you said you're going to do multifamily.
Correct, multifamily.
Okay. I know we talked about the parking, whether it's working or not, whether adjustments need to be made. Yeah, the parking. We were just talking about.
Space between the parking and the, yes.
Right.
Okay.
And I think, you're going to probably look at that parking at the street too. If you're shifting the driveway so you only are eliminating one, or if parking one is also going to get eliminated. If you can add a planting buffer there along the fence, I think that was a good suggestion. Where your mechanical equipment's going on site. I know you have a tight site and you're trying to work everything in, so just making sure that's considered too, because that will be important to consider. Similarly, the meters, I don't know if you've indicated where those are going to be.
I've showed those, yes.
Okay. We can go back to the elevations again too. I don't know if people had comments about.
Just real quick. I mean, just on this parking area, just again, it's a pretty significant impervious part of the site. There's a couple things. I mean, I think obviously there's the kind of the functionality of car overhangs hitting fences and things, but I think anything that can be done. Obviously these locusts that are going to be in there are certainly going to help. But I think just looking at that, it just feels like that. I know it's a tough situation, but I think that needs some work. I'm also a little concerned too about, I mean, how do you protect that side of the building from people just backing their cars into it, for example? I mean, typically, like when you had something like that, you would have a curb that would be off of the edge of the building. I mean, in a parking, right? So that people, if they back in, you're not just backing into the building.
The issue is backup space, really. I don't know. The space is
so.
I mean, is it? I got somebody asking me to push it over, and then I got somebody saying that there's too much asphalt. I mean,
but I think this is kind of I think this is really the point of kind of meeting with staff consultants, and because it's we don't want to get in a situation where it's like you're saying, hey, you're wanting to do this, but it affects that. I mean, the design is up to you and the applicant to weave all these things together. And the point of that is to sit down and be able to start, we don't want to just say, hey, look at this, and then it affects, I mean, we understand that, right. But that's why we kind of feel that it would be probably a very worthwhile thing here, because when you say, hey, what are the outstanding issues? Well, you got to develop the design. It's not a linear thing, right? It's like it's all these give and takes and all those things. So, but I think fleshing some of those issues out are important, because it comes down to one of those things. You're obviously looking at a variance on setbacks, and balancing all of those things. And I think it's really good to kind of flesh out some of these what may appear to be trivial details, but are kind of important when it gets in front of Sean to be like, well, hey, this isn't going to work, Right. So, but I think that area I think there's some things that need to be kind of considered there for sure.
Okay.
Anybody have any other comments? We do appreciate the progress that's been made, and we want to facilitate continued progress towards a
Right.
public hearing.
Do we go to the ZBA in conjunction with staff meeting? Or do you suggest ZBA then?
I think first the staff meeting, right?
Yeah, what I would think, I would suggest the staff meeting is probably a little bit more appropriate, because you get into situations with planning boards when they're talking about the site layout, and if you keep coming back and they keep making suggestions, it's kind of a way of, you meet with staff and you kind of can knock out some of the issues beforehand.
Right.
It's really just trying to save time in regards to all that. Once you think, the way things work at Sleepy Hollow is usually the planning board makes a recommendation as to the ZBA as to the proposed variance. So if you get the site plan in the state that the planning board is happy with it, they make that recommendation. I can't guarantee that it's going to go a long way. The ZBA has to apply the 5 factors, but it's something that does carry weight. So it's something to think about. And I think the process would probably be most expedited. Just to meet with Sean and staff and try and, really get a little bit more granular with some of the things. And see
Right.
how things are.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can I say something?
Yes.
I'm Gabriel Orlando. I'm the
Nice to
owner
meet
of
you.
the lot.
Yes.
And I appreciate all your help.
Yep.
And we're gonna tell you that we want the same thing you want.
Yeah.
The best for the Sleepy Hollow.
Yep.
I've been around in this business, and I think it's fair to say that the Sleepy Hollow is a well-run town. And I appreciate all your help. We've been here 3 times. I don't want to sound like last guy left. I know that's the point I did, though. I just want to make sure that in our part, we do the best we can.
Yes.
It's just no matter what.
Right.
To help everybody, to make sure that we,
Right.
all together, and the municipality is
Exactly.
happy.
Yeah.
Thank you for your attention, and thank you for letting us know what will be the best for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. I forgot, thank you for the new gentleman award. This guy. Landscaper, architect, probably not expensive. Thank you.
Okay, on to number 7. Edge on Hudson, Block O, P, and N, townhomes.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the board, consultants and staff, nice to see you all again. Welcome to the board, the new guys on board. My name is Bill McGinnis. We're Sun Homes. We're doing blocks O and P, and N actually where our clubhouse is. And the stage we're at is we took through approval a kit of parts that I can review with you to bring you up to speed on it, or
Yes,
or
that
not.
would be helpful.
Good idea. Okay, thanks. And then to consider our first block of, I'm sorry of this, but I did something really dumb, and I forgot the thumb drive at home today, and had my son load it on Dropbox. So I'm using someone else's thumb drive.
I see some
have no idea what's going on.
GoPro video clips
Oh,
there.
and I called him and I said, look, I really need you to do this. And he said, you got to make it quick. He had a call scheduled with a girl, and he told me he was in a hurry. So, okay, so first of all, the block in question is this block here. What we got approved so far is ARB approval on this block here, which is 4 20-foot interior units and 2 22-foot wide end units, homes. Over here, clubhouse, which is really 2 pavilions, one a club room and one a fitness center on either end of a long, slim lap pool with a parking lot. So this building in red and sort of pink here, this is a fourplex of 24-foot wide interior units and 28-foot wide end units. So our this is the kit of parts sheet that we brought through with the approval of Building N, the first 6 specs. And the elements really are sort of two warm gray brick colors, one a bit darker, one a bit lighter. Limestone sills and lintels and water table. A couple things we were able to do, I'm very pleased to say that the drawings we brought through considered the backs of the homes to have hardy, and there's some hardy clapboard on the backs of some brownstones on site now. We are able to carry the brick all around all 4 sides, and that's not something that we had on our original ARB drawings, and it's an upgrade, and I'm awfully happy to say that we're doing it. The rest of the elements are black wrought iron style, which powder coated aluminum, that's with wrought iron style, rails and window cages and handrails. And charcoal fabric awnings, fixed because of the wind load, but you see them throughout the buildings. The ones that we, on the kit of parts, and also the one we're presenting today. And then vertical landscaping, which really the big element of that is to have large planters at the party wall between each terrace up top. So you see up here, really street tree sized trees going in. And actually there'll be planters for privacy screens as opposed to hard privacy screen walls built. So that is the kit of parts, and the intention is that, I can go through to the rendering, is that there's variations on the kit of parts so that we have variety through the site. So where we differ from the first building, but I would argue still within the kit of parts that we had approved, is really down on the level of windowed mullion patterns as opposed to sort of cruciform. These are all horizontal, which is a bit more, I don't know, Parisian, I guess. It's just a different flavor on the building. And the proportions of the bay, that's really the base, that's really the big one. These, they have a good depth on them. They're 30 inches deep, and they're on as bays on the first building. And on this building, we're proposing that we really took them up into sort of a proportionally larger elements. And that helped us with something that really was a design intention that's in the original Hart-Hartman documents, which is to open up these buildings that face the park and the river as much as possible and animate them with outdoor spaces. So we always have the roof terraces and the patios in front of the homes on at grade, but the end units actually have colonnaded French doors with transoms, 11-foot ceilings as opposed to 10. And each one of these deep columns, when the French door is open, the French doors can click shut, fixed against the column, and then what you have is an open colonnade to Kingston Park and the river and the lighthouse. So really lovely aspect, I think. And then also the interior units, that bay element is sort of stepped down and the proportions change, and it allows for a balcony on the main living level, which is a really nice thing for people inside, but it also brings people outside. The patios below are lovely, but they're going to be of somewhat limited use because they're off home offices and they're at grade right on the sidewalk. These are, you could imagine feeling fairly comfortable stepping outside on your own balcony, a story above the street. And then also on the end units, we stepped the ends back 6 feet. It's actually 8 including the columns and 6 from the face of the finished space to create, again, another balcony off the master bedroom. So we really do feel not only are there numerous opportunities to step outside, but people actually will. There are actually places where people will actually feel they will do so. And then the ends step back 10 feet as well. So those roof terraces are significantly larger than our other ones. So we I actually, since submitting, we've been doing our marketing renderings. So I wrote we lined up his time. These guys work on fairly long lead times these days. So I actually had had him do a couple, so it's a little bit more photorealistic, it's a little bit, you know, this is the same building, but it gives, you know, a bit more of a qualitative sense of what we're talking about. One other thing too is we had spec'd precast sills and lintels. We're actually going to be able to use real limestone, which I'm really happy about. There's a few other things I wanted to go through. Oh, this is already approved, but this is actually the rendering of the pool. So that's the clubhouse pool across the street. I stuck it in there because you're the first to see it. So when you look at this is actually our approved first block rendered for marketing. So again, you see where the changes were. We built up the white bay elements larger, made them more prominent. Really, fairly similar rhythm, just different. They're masked differently. The same materials, different grid patterns in the windows. We design these places and we build them. We're the general contractor and we have control over the construction a lot more than most people do. And one of the benefits of that is we're able to coordinate everything through construction, through contracting. We're 95% contracted on that first building and we're ready to break ground. What that allows us to do is to, one of the comments I heard back, oh no, what did I just do? I'm sorry, I just lost where I was. Oh no, I'm there. Thanks, sorry about that, guys. One of the things we're able to do, a comment that came back was, where are the air conditioning condensers? We're heat pumps. We had a choice of double units, 2 zones or 2 condensers per unit, but they were taller, or 4 shorter ones, so we're proposing the shorter ones just so it's less visible. And they're clustered really as far in from the edge of the roof as we can get, and they're about 3 feet tall. The other thing though is all the penetrations that we can, we route to the roof. So bathroom exhaust fans, the fresh air intake for the range, and its exhaust, all the bathroom vents, all the plumbing vents. We use open web wood floor joists so we can run everything through without any chases. Booster fans where needed, and they're needed. So we minimize the penetrations on the backs of the building, or inside the buildings. Another thing too is that we have more prominent end locations that we do more on the edges of. I didn't articulate that very well, but this elevation on the left is the more prominent elevation facing the turning circle, and the one on the right is in a condition where the buildings are, I forget what they are. It's a wedge shape, but as little as 10 feet on one side. So on the more prominent elevations, we have no meters. On the fronts and backs, no meters. They only go where you see the black dotted rectangle in the less prominent locations, and they're all clustered on one end of the building. I put that really in the same category as clustering all the vents and penetrations in the top. Now, there's some things that do have to go. Obviously the fire alarm, the strobe, etc. But for example, the strobe will, and this will all be on our submissions going forward. Strobe will be underneath on the bottom of the bay windows, so you don't see them, unless they're going up. And then there's the truss diagram and the fire department. So all that will be on there, and we'll coordinate it as well as we'll coordinate everything else. The one thing on ours that I heard a comment back, but there were just two comments that I really wanted to address. One is, let me get to the mirroring last, because that's the biggest one. The percentage of the 4th floor as related to the floor below it, it's 50%. It actually was slightly over, so I just took 6 inches off that top just because 50% is something that's meaningful, when we have a zone to it. That's 50% of the reduced third level, because we pulled that back 6 feet from the face of the finished space. It's actually 46% of the footprint or the level below that. So hopefully that addresses that particular question. I was asked what were those figures.
And you're now saying you're in compliance with as the conditions were written in the original resolution? Am I hearing you correctly, or just say those numbers again?
That's a
You're
very
not yet
specific
complying.
question. I'm not sure about that, but the fourth level finished space is
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
50% of the floor below it.
Okay.
And something that I don't think was anticipated was that it's possible that the floor below would not be the full footprint.
Okay.
So it's 50% of the reduced footprint of the floor below it, but it's actually 46% of what
it could have been.
the full could have been, and then what it is, the floor below that.
Okay.
Now, the last point about mirroring, here's the thing. For reasons I don't remember, just a mistake, I actually designed this as a 5-unit building because the building next door is, and I just had my mind on a 5-unit building. And then the comment came, and I thought, oh, that's absurd, you know, and then I looked at it and I thought, actually, I kind of agree with that. And to me, it wasn't so much a mirroring thing, as it is a vertical versus horizontal thing. That's how I see it. It's a little too monolithic in the middle. It's no longer symmetrical, but you can hardly tell because I flipped it. But it's not. That's a fairly minimal change to address a question. So I have some ideas, and I want to come back with that. I'd like to get any comments that you have on all the rest of it, and I'd like to narrow things down to anything that we feel is outstanding between us. But I'm just acknowledging that I think I can do better on that, and we're going to come back with something else. And that's all I have to say on that. The opportunity to add the vertical garden comment, we have more opportunities to do it, and we'll take advantage of each one, and we're fine specifying on here that we're doing so. We're working on detailing the planters right now, and the drainage and scupper, and all sorts of, you know. So we also have other deck areas where I have landscaping shown on the drawings, and they'll be part of the approved plan.
Okay. Yeah, we were going to ask you to kind of go through each of the conditions of that original resolution to see how your design before us is complying or not, if or not. I know you've kind of, that's why I was just looking back at those conditions to see, because you, in describing it, you're touching upon many of them. You talked about the gated parts, clearly the mirroring you just mentioned. Articulation of the front facade required, vertical architectural delineation between units required. Fourth floor enclosure shall be limited to less than 75% of the floor below or interior units. And then we have the end unit that was 50% or less. Front yard setback shall not be less than 5 feet. What are they? Are
I don't know if they're compliant. I took them through Divney's office and was told that they're compliant. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Side yard setbacks shall not be less than 10 feet. Though there's some nuance there then, just kind of summarizing. And then the distance between units, the facade details and materials should be continuous on end units. Talks about roof pergolas. Do you have any roof pergolas?
No, you know, I'm not a fan.
Okay.
And we're working on, you see that the depth of the recess in that fourth floor, and then there's an eyebrow that comes out, and we're playing around with anything we can do. To me, they look like carports. I just don't like them. And also they're sold ad hoc, so you don't really know, compositionally, I don't think it helps the building. So.
Do you think you run the risk of the eventual owners putting in their own more temporary shading devices to address any?
We go through it on every project, and this one is a completely different animal, but on all others, we have a pre-designed, approved awning, and it depends on the project community. Sometimes we'll say awnings must be black, things like that. But on this one, No, the answer is no. That's actually limited common property. You can't do that. We've been through everything. We've had people build a tree fort behind their yard. We've had people, run a daycare out of it. We've seen it all, and we do know how to control that, and it's not allowed. But there's optional treatments on the doors we can do, whereby when they open up, they create a significant sunshade. There's actually a built-in fixed shade on the inside that goes up and down. Then when you open it, it acts as a sunshade. I went through a whole thing. I was at the builder show trying to get it all put together. That's what we'd like to do. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, and just the other thing, conditions were related to the meters, which you touched upon, and the venting and other things not being visible on the facades. So I know other members might have comments, or I'll open it up to everybody. Do you want to address the color?
Sure. Yeah, I think one question that I had is that, of course, you talked about the, I'd say the novelty of these blocks, right, is that you're interacting with that open space, the buffer, and then Kingsland. And of course, you're basically bringing people's living space into that environment. There's some reciprocity there, of course, right? There's people that are using that public space and looking back into Edge and Hudson. And the one comment that I had is that I can appreciate the very kind of clean coloring and everything that's going on here, but any thought on kind of some more muted colors other than kind of these higher, what I would consider to be highly visible? I mean, if you're in Kingsland Park, for example, and you're walking around, a very white building in the afternoon is going to be, pretty
beautiful.
Well,
sorry, yeah, right.
So, I don't like a true architect.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
that was my only comment. And again, it's not,
I understand. Well, it's a matter of how we choose to approach it, and it's very subjective. There's a couple things I want to say about it. These buildings will be seen from further away. And one of the things about the sort of the white bay elements is I do want them to step up and down, like sort of rescale a bit differently from 50 or 100 or 300 feet. I believe, that as when you stand back from a larger building, sit down in the city, there's a large porticos proportion like a door, and then you get closer, and the door is actually about a quarter that size, and so that scale up, scale down rhythm of those white bays is a signature part of the design. And they are very visible. There's no doubt about that. It wasn't our intention to make it muted. Having said that, they're very quiet and tasteful colors, and they'll be covered in greenery. But when I guess what I'd ask is, we agreed early on to come in and have ARB on every building and to vary the buildings as we go. So what I'd like to do is to say, okay, well, let's see how we do on this one, and it feels a little too overpowering. We can tone it down as we move down the line. Townhouses aren't built all at once the way condo buildings are, and we do make our adjustments as we go, and we'll be here for the approval of every building as we go. So I'd ask you to consider the way we're proposing it now. That would be my preference.
The material again of the white.
Let's see if
Is it stone?
we've done this detail before, and actually I'm very proud of it. We did it. Geez, I did it again. Hang on. Let's see if I got it. I've got a very small version of it here, and I'll pull up. About 15 years ago, we did a community in Stamford called Palmer Hill, and had condo buildings. Okay, right up in the corner there, I had a bigger picture, but I'm sorry, I can bring it next time. But if you take a look at this, you see those white bays? That's what these are. Now, we actually spent a lot of time working on this detail. We really spent. My issue with with Hardy isn't the material itself, although when it's darker, it doesn't age well, but the material itself is okay. It's the connections. So there's a lot of channels and battens and fussy little details, and it relies on the guy in the field to get it right, and there's a lot of sort of bent little and crooked and chipped little corners to it and things like that. What this is AZEK, and which is a PVC panel, but we can actually buy it in large sheets. We did it on these very large bays 14 years ago now, and I actually went back, before we made the decision to do this, I went back and drove in, and I was standing there, you know, picking out with my finger and looking and standing back. It's held up beautifully. I'm very happy with it. But we buy it in large enough sheets that if we show a monolithic piece 2 or 3 stories high, that's how it goes out. We buy it in one piece, we apply it on there. So the trick to it is the plywood underneath, we actually have our finish carpenter do it, and he glues and screws the corners, and then we fuse the corners of the PVC. So we really do stand by that detail. And the I've run out of words on that one, but it's PVC.
So could you get in other colors, or it only comes in white?
Would I?
I said,
Or-
could you?
I know you did.
Not would you?
I like it. I like it in white. I like you to work hard to embrace the.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I mean, I was looking at your other, I think what's right there at the end. I was zooming into the image that you were just referring to, and in that rendering, I think because we're at the Kit Parts book page, I mean, those white elements are smaller proportionally, and so when you talk about breaking down the facade in these different scales, even from afar, I was just wondering if there's any opportunity on what you presented tonight to do something similar. So there's still some white, but maybe not as much, and maybe it's not applicable, but I'm just,
What I ask is, could we do this one and look at it, and if you say, I'll be back here time and again anyway. One other technical concern about anything but white when it comes to those materials is them not weathering with the UV. The white does great, and the darker it gets, the less. I mean, I've seen there's all sorts of new materials, and it's really exciting. There's but so you be careful what you use,
Right.
So the colors I'd be concerned about. But aside from that, I do like it in white, and it's got, it's got sort of I mean, they're very robust, and they're very simply detailed, and they're white, and that's what I think they should be. I guess that's the best argument I could put up for that one.
and the material at the top roof level that's enclosed?
Yeah, that's actually, now that'll look like the same, but it's likely to be, what we're leaning towards now is Versatex, which is like a Fipon. So it's a high density, and it would have a flashing on the top. But it will look the same as the other material.
And you're intending it to be white also?
That's right, yeah. In a perfect world, it would be limestone.
I think, anybody else have other comments or questions?
You said, you did say there was some limestone on.
Yeah, the sills and lintels. So we've got a 2-inch, we took a really good look at, anytime I was passing a window, I took a picture of it down in the city or wherever I was. And the one thing I always liked was when the lintel was the same depth as the still, not that exaggerated large block. So we've got a good recess on the windows. Well, that's another thing. We're using 2x4 jambs on the windows, which gives us a full brick return on every window. So we're going to have a 3.5-inch depth. So we've got that nice shadow line to go along with a lot of other windows that are recessed 1 foot and 18 inches, etc. So our building step, our windows are I've been wanting to do that 2x6 jamb detail for like 20 years, and now I finally put my foot down on the budget and said we're doing it. Between the jogs in the the steps in the building, which are 2 feet, and the depth of the windows, which go anywhere from 3.5 inches to 18 inches to 2 feet, there'll be a lot of shadow line on these buildings and a lot of definition, and also you'll know unit to unit, home to home, that it's an individual home.
What's the material below wall at the
With the
ground?
wall, which wall?
Yeah, along the, at the base of the building, kind of enclosing
Oh,
those.
that's, okay, I'm gonna say that it's precast, but it's almost certainly gonna be limestone to match the sills and lintels, but we're waiting on,
Pricing.
yeah, I've managed to over-deliver on the materials so far, I'm doing my best on that one. Water table.
Any other comments or questions?
How do people access the mechanical equipment?
It's a ladder from the roof terrace. Oh, there was also a question on gutters and leaders. The flat roof on the 4th level will have an internal roof drain. It's really the only reasonable way to do it. And then the roof terrace and all the decks below that will have scuppers and rainwater leaders.
The solar question, do you wanna?
Oh, yeah, any consideration of solar?
We are awaiting a proposal now. I will be happy to talk to you about it when we receive it.
Good.
So if I understood correctly, you're planning to come before us again to show us what you hope to be an even better iteration of a non-mirroring facade, correct?
Yeah.
That's the one thing you're still working on?
Yeah. I really forced myself to admit that it was going to be a lot nicer if I changed it yesterday. I'm very stubborn, but yes, that's the outstanding issue to me.
Okay, so we'll see you anticipate being back in April then?
Definitely, we're going to be resubmitting shortly. Any opportunity I can have to work with the village architect, I'll take it, and any comments that come back through him or any of the consultants are appreciated.
Yep.
And could I ask if we're headed in the right direction if we come back with that recomposed mirror imaging issue addressed? Is there anything else anyone has a serious concern about?
Yeah, I think it seems to be within the Kidda parts. You've already addressed a lot of the things that were raised, I know, through Jean previously. I think you've heard our comments, but we look forward to seeing that.
Great.
That elevation.
Thanks so much. Do appreciate it.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to the board.
Thank you.
I know, I was going to say something, but since we're not even, so yeah, I was saying it now. Thank you. The last, did everybody get a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Motion to approve the minutes by Rochelle.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it. Oh, go.
Okay, Aaron seconded. Approving your minutes? Yeah.
Come on, people, hold it together.
All in favor of approving the minutes from February 16th, 2023?
Aye.
Yeah, you can abstain if you want.
You want to abstain?
Unless you watch the video.
Yeah, if you didn't watch the video or read the minutes.
Yeah, then you can abstain, and that, we still have a quorum, so
Yeah.
we're good. I think that with that, do I have a vote to, do I have to close? A vote to close or no? No, okay, so I am just going to close tonight's meeting.
You're the boss.